Hey everyone, my name's Matt, co-founder and CEO of New Culture, and we're making cow cheese without the cow. So there's a global movement going on. School kids from all over the world in their thousands are now taking it upon themselves to protest on the streets. They're demanding action on climate change because it's their future and they're fighting for it. And we don't just have to see these protests to witness the demand, because over 70% of millennials and Gen Z are willing to pay higher prices for sustainable food products. And sustainability has never been more needed than for an industry we quite frankly don't hear enough about. The dairy industry. Being from New Zealand, where dairy is our biggest export, I've seen firsthand the amount of damage that this industry can cause, where one dairy cow produces twice as much methane as a beef cow. And it's an industry that produces one of the most unsustainable of all food products. Cheese. A food that we never think of as harmful because it's such a unique part of our history and identity, with thousands of variations from all over the world that each tell a unique story. And when I think of cheese, I don't just think of the taste, but the smell, the texture, the way it's presented, the craft of how it was made. But although cheese is great in all these different ways, the actual production of it is extremely unsustainable. So the question is, why aren't people buying sustainable cheeses? Because the only sustainable cheeses on the market today, plant-based vegan cheeses, simply don't work. The dairy components that make up dairy cheese are so unique that they're impossible to replicate with only plant-based options. And that's why the vegan cheeses we see today are either spreads or bad replicas of the hard cheeses. They don't melt well. They don't have the same mouthfeel. They simply don't act or taste like cheese. So we asked ourselves, what is responsible for those traits that we love about dairy cheese? Well, it turns out there's a group of proteins, the casein proteins, that are responsible for much of these traits. In milk, casein proteins form aggregates called casein micelles, super molecular structures that are very complex, that are very unique, only been found in mammalian milk, and that are essential for cheese making. Because casein micelles make cheese melt. They make cheese stretch. They're responsible for the different textures we see in cheese, the hardness, the softness. Casein micelles represent the large gap we see between dairy cheese and sustainable cheese. But not for long. Because we are making dairy cheese with casein micelles without needing a single cow. With casein micelles, we've crafted from individual casein proteins using the right mix of salts and other minerals to reform these magical structures. And as you can see behind me, they're almost indistinguishable to casein micelles found in cow's milk, allowing us to create a new mozzarella that has all the traits, all the nutrition, all the characteristics of cow's milk mozzarella, but without any of the unsustainable or unhealthy drawbacks. And we can see this in the data. You can think of the curve behind me as the journey of a bite of cheese. The higher the curve, the harder you have to bite down to complete the chew. Using purified casein micelles, we made a proof of concept cheese that is almost identical in texture and softness when compared to cow's milk cheese. And you can see how far away vegan cheese really is. Furthermore, we ran a meltability and a stretch test on our cheese, where we heated it up with a torch to see how well it melts. And as you can see the video behind me, it melts just as well, if not better, than cow's milk cheese. And you try doing this with vegan cheese. We did a double-blind taste test where the class didn't do better than chance at distinguishing our cheese versus cow's milk cheese. So the question is, how do we do this? How do we make casein proteins that form casein micelles? The answer is actually quite simple. We are using microbes to make our cheese proteins. The way it works is that we take our engineered microbe and we grow it in a plant-based solution. As it grows, it begins secreting casein proteins, which we form into those magical casein micelles. Once enough has been made, we simply swap out our engineered microbes with fresh cheese starter culture to continue the fermentation process of turning those proteins into cheese. And by doing it this way, by optimizing our process for cheese making, it changes everything. It allows us to reduce downstream processing, which in turn reduces costs, and finally enables us to develop this technology for the food industry. And we have a preliminary patent filed by Wilson Sonsini to protect this process. And we know what happens when a good, sustainable product reaches the dairy market at scale, with a decline of dairy milk and the rise of plant-based milk. Now we translate this over to the cheese market with $136 billion, and those same conscious consumers, those same flexitarians, those same health-conscious consumers, those same lactose-intolerant consumers, those same vegans and vegetarians that are spending billions of dollars on plant-based milks will be buying our cheese. Because this demand is not just theoretical. We've gone out into the industry, onto large digital platforms, and received an overwhelmingly positive response. People are excited. This is the final frontier of the clean foods movement. We ran a wait list for people to try our cheese and have over 4,000 people signed up in under 6 weeks. Building this captivating story and this strong brand is how we will go to market. First in restaurants, but not just on a pizza, on a cheese platter and a salad by itself. Then as we scale, we'll move into fast food chains and eventually supermarkets. The New Culture team consists of talented and passionate scientists from some of the world's top universities. Our advisory team are global experts in their respective fields, all together forming a team that has the drive, the skills, the passion, the commitment needed to revolutionize the cheese industry with a new culture. And that's why we're raising $2.8 million, with half the round already committed, to build the pilot process of our end-to-end fermentation system and take the first step in a clean cheese future. Now we have 500 samples waiting for investors to try after this, and invite you to try some of our cheese and meet me after if you want to join our rounds. Thank you.